Oh my
That guy had run
God.
around and plugged in Bitcoin miners all over the place, and I'm sure they were like, "Man, those run hot." And IT is so expensive when it comes to power, and he's over there going like this.
Then the very next email I got was Jasmine 11, and I knew I had a problem. Somebody had just done a phishing attack on me. I had clicked on it. I went to look at my secure server online. I couldn't find it, my domain name. I was unable to sell tickets to the next upcoming basketball game. I lost my complete email on something I should have known better about. And this is the key that I thought would never happen to me.
I got fired a lot before I started this, and at the time, my wife finally looked at me and said, "You're going to need to go do your own thing because I can't stand you coming home saying that you got kicked out again."
Welcome to the Tech Stack, brought to you by TechMarketingTeam.com. I'm your host, Denny Basham, and we're dedicated to bringing you authentic conversations with the innovators and leaders shaping the managed IT services industry. Each episode, we dive deep with MSP owners, founders, and industry experts to uncover the strategies, challenges, and success stories that matter most to IT service providers. Whether you're scaling your MSP, looking to enhance your service offerings, or seeking new ways to grow your client base, you'll find actionable insights here. Today, we're joined by Dan Polk, the CEO of Silicon Plains, as well as Darrell Middleton, the Colorado Regional Account Manager, and Damian Esslinger, Marketing Coordinator. Dan, Darrell, and Damian are going to share their unique perspectives on marketing and business development for MSPs. We'll explore everything from client acquisition strategies to the latest in managed services innovation. Let's dive in and discover the strategies that are transforming IT businesses today. Dan, Darrell, and Damian, welcome to the podcast. For our listeners, could you each give a brief introduction as well as discuss your roles at Silicon Plains?
Damian Esslinger, marketing coordinator here with Silicon Plains. I make the joke that I do all of the things the sales guys don't like to do. So that covers a whole lot of territory, but primarily focused on marketing activities and lead generation.
And I'm Dan, CEO of Silicon Plains, and my day-to-day job is really sales manager.
I'm Darrell Middleton. I'm the key account executive right out here in Colorado. I engage with a lot of our customers on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis.
Awesome. Thank you. So for those unfamiliar, could you describe where Silicon Plains operates and what types of businesses you serve?
We operate from a geographic standpoint, primarily North Dakota and Colorado, southern Denver, down around Lone Tree. We service clients all over the place, but when Darrell is out looking for the next business, he's looking in the Denver area, sometimes as far as the Western Slope. And in North Dakota, we have Mike Fink, who focuses primarily Central North Dakota.
Gotcha. So how did Silicon Plains get started, and what was the motivation behind creating a regional MSP serving, like you said, mainly North Dakota and Colorado?
I don't think that the way that we got started was all that unique. Other than I got fired a lot before I started this, and at the time, my wife finally looked at me and said, "You're going to need to go do your own thing because I can't stand you coming home saying that you got kicked out again." So when we got off the ground, the reality of it is I'd been through enough IT companies or done IT and other businesses where you hit kind of this glass ceiling that business leaders and owners just didn't understand how to do it. And so you would get to a point where you really wanted to step up to professionalism. You wanted to run it right. You didn't want to buy things off eBay anymore. You wanted to have standards. You wanted more documentation. And you would get told, "Can't you do it cheaper?" And I thought, there's got to be a better way to get this done. I was working for a giant transportation company, and we had a whole bunch of PCs, and I was the IT director at the time. And what kicked it off was I had computers across 26 locations in something like 4 or 5 states that I was personally supposed to take care of, and I couldn't. And when I went looking for a third party who could take care of these PCs for me to contract it out, the first person that showed up was in a leather jacket and smelled like whiskey and smoke. And after 3 or 4 more of those experiences, I thought there has got to be a better way to get this done. And that got Silicon Plains off the ground.
Nice. I'm not going to ask what kind of smoke because I've been around IT for a long time as well. It sounds like my story too. How many times have we all been laid off? Raise your hand if it's more than 3, right?
Yeah.
So your approach really involves flat rate investments instead of hourly charges, covering advanced cybersecurity and unlimited help desk. How does that model create value and unique value for your clients?
I don't even think the model really does from a pricing standpoint. I think what it does, it's all value upfront during the sale. And then on a regular basis, when businesses who buy IT or buy an expectation in IT are trying to figure out what it costs them, that's where the flat rate really provides real value. That as one of our clients, they look at their budget and think, what would it cost me to hire somebody to do this work versus what would it cost to contract it out? So we work our butts off to make sure that when we're charging month to month or over the course of a contract, hopefully forever, that they look at it from a from the perspective of what would this cost me in terms of an FTE, a full-time employee. And we always try to be a fraction of that cost so they can look at it and think, well, I like what I'm getting from Silicon Plains. It's better than what I would get from an individual that I would hire, and it costs me less.
Got it. What do you think sets you apart other than that flat approach from other MSPs in the region? What makes you unique? Are there unique industries you best serve?
When I got started, I was lucky enough to have a competitor quit. He was a big deal in the managed services space, one of the very first people to be involved in peer groups through ConnectWise, and was running peer groups and started his own thing as a side hustle at the time. And he walked into our office and said, I'd like to give you all of the cheat codes to make your company run right. And it gave me the perspective I needed to, instead of approach it like a service technician would, where if I do a really good job, the customer is going to pay me and they're going to pay me a whole lot of money. How hard can it be? Which is a pure recipe for immediate failure. I instead got to take him out for beers and pay for lunch every once in a while, and we became best friends over the course of time. But what set us apart is we were ahead of that curve. We weren't learning by falling down. I was simply following along with what he said we should be doing, how we should be structuring things, what should our general ledger look like. When we do price our services, how should we price it? How should we train salespeople and so on? And it put us out in front of other managed service providers who were still learning maybe we should not sell block time.
I think that comes down to the break fix model, where if your computer breaks or server breaks, you jump in and fix it like a smoke jumper versus someone that's strategically planning. How often do your sales folks and account managers go out and meet with clients? What does that look like to be involved as a partnership with your clients and
Pretty
prospects?
straightforward when it comes to how we handle that. We go out and we meet with clients as often as they want us to meet with them. And sometimes if they're not meeting enough, we'll start making phone calls and say, you don't get to not meet with me. The difference being that when we sit down and meet with them, it's almost purely strategic. Lots of managed service providers will show up with, here's how many tickets you opened, and whether or not anybody put in a happy face or or sad face about your service levels. But Darrell sits down around a focus item that lets him plan at a business level what the expenses are going to look like and what the IT projects are going to look like, typically a year to 2 years in advance, and work backwards from there. And so that sets up the planning stage for our clients from a value standpoint, where instead of it being about just that flat rate approach and, wouldn't it be nice to predict your costs, we're actually involved in their planning meetings annually, quarterly, and otherwise.
So budgetary planning, going out, helping your clients plan out a year or two in advance for equipment costs, for whatever cloud costs,
Yeah,
et
and not
cetera,
just
migration
costs,
costs.
because nobody likes IT. That they're computers. We all wish we could get by without them and just talk to the Star Trek computer in the wall and have it do everything for us. But we've still got to get basic expenses taken care of. But even sometimes more so importantly than that, we have to sit down with our clients and ask, what are they missing? What don't they have in place that would keep them more competitive, that would help them to be more efficient? And where might they have gaps in their overall approach to IT, not just cybersecurity, but in tons of other areas like better documentation, assistance with compliance, you name it. All of that comes up during those meetings.
So your team emphasizes being a local service provider with a national level of expertise. How do you scale your business, your services for businesses of all different sizes, small, medium, large?
Well, you kind of don't. One thing that we found is that if small businesses ask us to be cheap, they might not be the best fit for us. And so our approach tends to be that when we're talking to these business owners, these small companies, big companies, we have a standard that we bring to the table as to how we're going to interact and what we expect out of the relationship and what we think they should expect out of us. And we'll talk about that with them and make sure that we're on the same page. The worst thing is to be in business with someone who doesn't see eye to eye with what you're trying to deliver and whether or not they value.
Yeah, it's hard when they don't understand the value you bring. And how do you help them? And if they don't listen to your expert advice, how are you going to have change and take care of them?
Sometimes we help them find other providers.
Like yes, you might be a better fit for the people down the
Yeah,
street.
that has happened. But the majority of our clients come on board and they tell us the same thing over and over, and that is that we're a refreshing take on how IT should be approached. That it's not this kind of nerdy, only talking about cybersecurity and the hackers that are going to get through the firewall and the nation state attacks, they're going to steal all their Bitcoin and you name it. That's all important. And we bring all that to the table, but it's typically something that people wish they didn't have to deal with. And so we'll shift that to the back from a focus standpoint and say we're taking care of it. It's best in class. It's world-class services in this particular area. But I bet you want to talk about how you can not have to hire so many people next year, and how do we get that done using something like AI.
Yeah, I think letting plumbers be plumbers or electricians be electricians, whoever, like, don't try to be an IT expert. Also, don't try to be a marketing expert if you're not. Same kind of deal. I think that's that same category. And outsource everything that you don't want to do. From what I've read, onboarding with Silicon Plains involves zero data loss or downtime. So, how do you make that smooth transition when people are coming from other providers that are not meeting their needs? How do you do that?
We do that by not taking that nerdy approach. So ours is all standards based. So we've done it 100 times. We know how it's going to turn out. We don't go in and strong arm new clients and say you have to switch over to all our stuff. We only like our equipment. We only like our PCs. They have to come from Dell. We only like it when you hold the keyboard a certain way on your desk, whatever. And so, then we don't do any of that. What we do is tons of research behind the scenes, and we do a ton of data collection behind the scenes. We document all of that. It's a tremendous amount of documentation. And then we cross-train the entire team here, both in North Dakota and Denver, on how to handle this particular client. And this includes not just what are usernames and passwords. What we'll do is say, in the past, they've had these weird issues with this particular piece of equipment. Internally, they call it this. But in reality, when you see the equipment, it's called that. They have this vendor who you have to call a special phone number if you really want to get help, but you can only do that every 2 weeks. It's all this data and information that looks like it's just this nuanced garbage, but it's the most important thing. And that's what we cross train on, so that when we do switch over, we're speaking their language. We obviously know how to access all of their stuff, and we know all the weird things about what it takes to take care of them in today's state. And then Darrell starts talking to them about, here's where you are, we know everything, and here's where we need to start planning to be.
Everyone does think it's nerds that run things, but it's that business process, background stuff that keeps clients happy and where you're able to meet their needs. Because if you don't record that information, they don't feel special.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the stuff that gets lost in onboarding. Is too many IT companies think we'll go in and do our onboarding and we're so good with Cisco. We know everything about Meraki. We've got Checkpoint down, and nobody's better at Checkpoint. That stuff doesn't matter to the business owner unless you break it. What they really want to know is when they say we've got XYZ software that handles our accounting, you don't go, what's that? How often do you guys need, when do you run payroll? Silicon Plains and the staff, we already know all those things.
Amy and I were talking a lot about how you present to business owners is so important. It's not about the bits and bytes, it's about what keeps them up at night, which is, if something happens, how do you make sure they come back online? If I get hacked, what do I do? Someone has a ransomware attack, do I have backup to recover the things that make them sweat they wake up into in the morning thinking about that stuff? So tell us at least one or two stories of a customer incident and how you were able to save them or prevent downtime. So how did you help customers with challenges?
We had a local dentist. She had a current provider, and they weren't really as staffed up and as knowledgeable as we are here at Silicon Plains. She gave me a call right around January time frame of this year, and she had lost all her data. She thought her data was being backed up ever since June of last year. And the first thing I asked her, doctor, are you okay, first of all? And then she went into a very personal story about how her husband didn't really want her to run this business. And sure enough, we put our team on the problem. We grabbed her server and recovered the data that she had lost. And we replaced her provider, which, like you said, was a 1 or 2 man shop. And certainly she had outgrown them and definitely came back to our services. We were able to protect her business and get it running smoother and ultimately give her some more time back at home so that she could also create balance in her life. And that's just a simple story of some of the things that we're able to do just based on our expertise, and then me personally interacting with another human and understanding the real challenges that she was going through inside of her life and her practice.
That's awesome.
My favorite story to this day isn't one about loss. It was actually a story involving Darrell. It was early on in his career at Silicon Plains, and he was going on site to take a look at a network, and not in the capacity of one of our analysts or engineers. It was just, show me around your place and let me see some of your computers and so on. But what they don't know is Darrell knows a lot of things about IT, and he knows what doesn't belong, and was walking around site to site with this prospect, and he kept seeing these particular types of boxes. And Darrell thought to himself, that doesn't look like a normal piece of networking equipment. And it's kind of loud and it's kind of hot. And they went to the next site, walked into the room, and Darrell thought, And pretty soon he calls me up and he goes, Dan, you're not going to believe this. This customer prospect, every single one of their IT rooms, somebody has plugged in an unauthorized Bitcoin mining box.
Their previous IT
The previous
provider
IT
had
had done
used
it. Yeah. That guy had run around and plugged in Bitcoin miners all over the place, and I'm sure they were like, "Man, those rooms run
Oh
hot."
man.
And IT is so
Yeah.
expensive when it comes to power, and he's
Yeah.
over there going like this.
Part two of that story, I unplugged them all and gave them to her so that she could.
Yeah, do whatever
That's her
she wanted.
equipment now. That's right.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah,
great story. I
just
completely forgot about
that's
that. Yeah.
crazy. Just change the Bitcoin address it's going to and use
Hmm.
it for your client. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's the first time I've ever heard one of those. But I
It
can
was a
see it.
first
Server
for me
room's a good
too.
place to throw them. It's nice and cool in there, and you can use their power. I just can't even imagine. All right, so those are two great stories. If there's any more, we'll bring them. Bring it on. Right. So cybersecurity is huge as far as what you do, and I know that Silicon Plains has the gamut. The AI detection, ransomware protection, encrypted hardware, and 24/7 monitoring. But talk a little bit more about how that all gets integrated and how you work with clients on that stuff.
We take a slightly different approach with that too. Our approach with cybersecurity is unbelievable amount of prevention, but then also being able to react really well if something does happen and very quickly. So internal lines of communication that are instant. We've got the alarm bell and the red spinning light and every kind of concept that you have internally to make sure that people know when something weird happens that we jump on top of it. But we also contract with giant companies that do this for a living and their reputation rides on it to make sure that we have it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So the lockdown that happens on a network is usually a little bit of a shock to some of our new customers because when we come in, they think, well, we already have antivirus. And we say, antivirus is almost irrelevant these days. It comes built into Windows and it's pretty good. We need a bunch of other things, including training your staff on how to not do things that could compromise your network and cause real problems for you. Something that I see a lot with cybersecurity is when you start talking about it, it starts to sound like this super nebulous, difficult to get your mind around, 30 different ways to approach it, and everybody's got their own flavor. But the reality of it is, it's just a method of locking the network properly and then being able to react well if something does happen. So we have two different types of backup in every network that we put together, two different companies that provide the backup because there's no such thing as perfection, but you can have two different things that back up your network. So the cybersecurity, that whole nebulous, it doesn't make sense to me and do I really need it? We take it to the nth degree and we're going to try to trick them almost every day into clicking on things. And then we force them to take video training and on and on and on to make sure that everybody knows that it was Denny who clicked on that link. And Denny would have otherwise been the problem, but we stopped Denny from being the problem. And now he has to go to detention.
And now we're gonna publicly shame him. Yeah.
That's right. It's one of my favorite parts of it. But now the reality of it is we were super hardcore. We do what's another nerd phrase called zero trust. So we don't go in and say everything's fine and we'll keep an eye out for bad guys. We say nothing is fine as a place to start. Nothing can run, no programs can operate, no one can access anything. And then we just start turning things on one at a time until the business runs right. And then we say nothing in addition unless there's permission. So that network, zero trust is the way to go. And then that network only runs with what we said it can run with. And if somebody clicks on something accidentally and it tries to run on the computer, it's not a matter of catching it. It just simply won't run.
I know you do some phishing training as well, and also I saw multi-factor. It's kind of a given these days, multi-factor.
Absolutely.
But so that training, tell me more about like how do you go in and you are constantly trying to spoof people and trick them, and I mean obviously you're having the owner's permissions to do this stuff, but we try to trick you later. How does this work?
Yeah, well, so it's a constant state of trying to trick them. Our intention is to not be obvious in the way that we're trying to get people to click on stuff. And in reality, we want them to click on stuff every once in a while so that they can have that damn it moment to think, I shouldn't have done that. I should have been thinking that time when I clicked on that thing. Because it's still 80% of all compromises come from people clicking on stuff and giving away a piece of information that they thought they could give away to a source that they thought was legitimate, and none of that was true. And so we try to put a big stop to most of that stuff by the zero trust approach. But then for the things that might slip through, we're still relying on people to be smart and have good judgment and be paying attention when they're using email or on the web or whatever it is they happen to be doing. And that comes from nearly constant training that we provide as part of the service.
And process too. I was thinking about this the other day with the advent of AI, and you can spoof anyone's voice. How do you make sure that the accounts payable people don't end up paying $100,000 to the wrong place and sending a wire out because the CEO called and sent an email that was a phishing email or a spoofed email, and it sounds like the CEO. Like I'm almost thinking you need a code word every week to prevent that. So it's internal process. It's not all just tech.
Absolutely. And that's part of that training. So one of the things that I'm glad that we don't have to do is come up with every single scenario that needs to be trained. We hire a company for that, and then we provide that service to the businesses, and we go out and we find the best one and make sure that it's custom tailored to whoever our customer happens to be, that it runs right for them, and that they're getting smarter and that they're staying safe too. Yeah, that kind of training is vital, and it goes through that kind of stuff because you are clicking on things. This is why we kind of hope you click on stuff, because it'll take you to remedial training, which a lot of times involves videos, just to step you through. What's it like to live in the day of a safe employee, which you are not today?
Right. It sounds like The Office. It's like doing the Michael Scott training.
Right.
So let's talk about your responsive help desk. So you built a reputation for getting issues resolved quickly. How do you create a reliable support structure internally, and how do you interact with clients?
Something that I heard about early on was taking small groups of service technicians and focusing them on a smaller group of customers. The idea is sometimes called pods, but the reality of it is you're just getting better service because you have fewer people to talk to. So we end up with groups who are dealing with smaller groups of clients. And so you still have a personal touch. They still get to know the employees of those particular businesses. And so even though we're a growing large managed service provider, with umpteen service technicians all answering the phone at any given time, you're still going to get one of your 3, 4, 5 techs when you call in that you're used to talking to. And if you want to talk to Denny when you call in, you can ask Damien, hey, do you know where Denny is? And Damien will know. It's not a giant
Everyone wants to
cube
talk to
farm.
Denny.
That's right. It's not a giant cube farm in the middle of nowhere and no calls are going to India. Everybody knows everybody and we're smart on your stuff.
Right on. It sounds like it's related back to creating a personal connection with clients while you're expanding. So those pods are a key. It's a group of 3 or 4 techs and maybe an
Typically,
account
yeah,
manager that's in the pod that services 20, 30 clients. Is
you
that
got it.
about what it is?
You got it.
So do you have any examples of industries or specific clients that have benefited most from your services, like healthcare, aviation? Like, this is back to story time again. Any particular verticals?
So we thought that we might get into verticals back in the day. We thought that we would, get really good at a particular thing. And what we found is it ended up not mattering. And that the verticals would come from people like Darrell, who would come to the table and say, I know everybody in X industry. Let's go talk to all of them. And that would make for a vertical. But what we've done instead is standardization and like super documentation and super business process driven internally for ourselves, just extends out to our clients. And so we get good at dealing with HIPAA compliance. We know how it works. We get good with CMMC compliance. We know how it works. Whether it's something dealing with credit cards, something in banking, when it comes to financial compliance and whatever else, we've got experts in all of that too. So we try not to create this super tall organizational structure that requires a lot of complexity to navigate the service desk. And not only do our customers want to talk to somebody that they mostly recognize, but they probably want to talk to somebody who knows stuff. And when they don't know stuff, that person needs documentation for themselves so that they can dig in, figure it out, and solve the problem quickly, because it's rare that we run into brand new problems we've never seen before. And so having that fantastic documentation and regimented process on our side makes it that the experience clients have is these guys just know everything. They're really good at what they do, and they must have all this information available at their fingertips. And that's absolutely true. We do.
And I'd like to add to that, when you get bogged down on compliancy issues, it becomes almost comical. But we were having a call recently where the customer had some real serious concerns about a compliancy issue, and it was going to take concerted effort for 1 to 2 years to get to the level of compliancy they wanted. But just in the discovery, they're not even ordering the correct equipment, right? They don't even like their current provider anyway. So we got a real chuckle that we're sincerely putting the cart in front of the horse when they didn't even have a strong MSP in place. So to Dan's point, you come out of the standard offerings that we have, and you're going to get to the compliance that you want. Maybe it needs to be customized a little bit more, but really what we're providing is a first class solution for your IT needs.
That's personalized too. I'm not going to let Damien off without saying something. So, related to all the stuff we've been talking about, how you do things uniquely, how you have personalization with your clients, how does that inform your marketing? How is the messaging different than the nerds and bits and bytes than what you'd see from a standard MSPs? How do you communicate that message that you're different?
We don't do anything cold and generic, right? So we always take the approach of every message we send out needs to be built around a value add of some kind. So, for example, if we're going to host a webinar, our first touch point with a local business owner is going to be a simple, we're hosting a webinar on this topic. You might find it interesting. We'd love to meet with you. Or we're doing a blog post on your industry because we just saw United Healthcare got taken down. So whenever we reach out to anybody from a marketing or prospecting perspective, it needs to be built around bringing actual value and industry specific as well. And by doing that, you don't come across as a cheesy sales guy. While it's hard sometimes to do because at the end of the day, we do want to get to know you and we would love to work with your business. It's about how you present yourself. Your cold email and call rates are under 5%. If you're best in class from an MSP marketing perspective, you'll be at maybe 8. So by just trying to have real conversations, you get better results and people don't mind talking to you afterwards.
So MSPs, if you're listening, webinars are key, and personalization of the content, inviting people. If you're not doing webinars, you're missing it. We're getting our webinar series launched in August. We're getting the podcast things going. This is part of the personalization, adding value as well, because when values are clear, decisions are easy. And when you provide value and personalization to your clients and that's your messaging, it becomes a whole different kind of conversation. It's a much warmer introduction, and they already have trust in what you do. They know who you are from how you market to them.
Yeah, and to follow up off of that, it also positions you in a certain size class of MSPs. Your two-man break fix shop down the street does not host 40-minute webinars with industry experts on topics relating to what you're interested in. They just can't. So when it comes time to have those conversations that are part salesy, part not, when you start talking about what does an MSP like Silicon Plains do differently, we have tons of free resources on industries that we work in every single day that we would love to share with you. Your current guy doesn't even have time to answer the phone live. There starts to become this divide. There are some companies that can provide these kind of things and some that can't. And that conversation can start with a blog post or a webinar invitation or a, hey, we're doing a big cookout at, a parking lot we've got, at our locations. And then it's easier to communicate that kind of divide across things like service or account management or response times. So it elevates you into a different tier of provider.
I'm available for cookouts, just so you know. And I am in Denver, Darrell. If there's cookouts, please do let me know, because free food's always a draw for me. I didn't build this body without lots of food.
A lot of dedication,
hard work. Well, thanks, Damien. That was awesome. So, remote work is here to stay. Seamless remote operations. We're in cloud mode now. Most people are not doing on-premise servers anymore. Maybe they're there for backup, but everything's cloud. So how do you help organizations manage seamless remote workers and even phones coming in from outside and tablets and all these devices that are not controlled by the company? How do you manage that?
Oddly, it doesn't start with the technology. It typically starts with the company and the owner and the policy and the process and their HR department, and whether or not this stuff has shown up in their employee manual and whether or not they signed it and said they would and wouldn't do these kinds of things. We help them with what are the requirements of your particular industry. If it's healthcare, does that computer have to sit in a room with a door that shuts? What if someone else wandering past behind the person who's trying to work remotely can look at the screen and see what's on it? Does paperwork have to be face up or face down on that particular desk, and so on? And what happens to the care of that data if they pick the laptop up and wander around in their apartment with it and set it down and somebody else has the chance to open it up and see it? So the technology for remote work is super easy. There's nothing to it. Everybody knows that. We go home, we can access the stuff we need at work as long as it's been made available by IT, but it doesn't start with that. It starts with the procedures and the policies that you have to have in place, and making sure that if your industry says that a particular way of accessing data has to happen, or you're either out of compliance or you're out of business, then you need somebody like Silicon Plains, who's already been down that path, to say, we know how to do that. And we can even give you some of the policies as a template to get started.
So you were asking about strategic planning. We talked a lot about marketing and how we approach our customers, and we talked about how we onboard them. Of course, we provide the cybersecurity that they need and the help desk that they need, so that now they're a fully onboarded customer of ours. One of the reasons that I was attracted to Silicon Plains is not only my great looking face, thank you, Dan, but also my business experience here in Colorado. I've owned 3 businesses right here in the South Metro area of Colorado. So I understand what it means from a customer business standpoint. So one of the first things that I do when I'm doing a strategic plan for a customer is really get into the core of what they're doing, understand their sales and growth plans, their partnerships that they may have in place, their strengths and weaknesses, and then tie that into how not only technology can support them, but how our company can support them. Then we have a strategic plan going forward with a technology roadmap. And we can define the hardware and software needs that they may have and be able to scale to their business as they see it in the future. One of the things that Dan tells us all the time is that we're never selling, we're always planning. So we can also take a look at available grants that help them out. And then after that, we have our quarterly, if not monthly, meetings so that we can implement that plan and monitor it so that they're on track. One of the things I personally do, I never speak down or speak at a customer with regards to technology. It's really all about strategic planning and getting their business to where they want it to be.
Never selling, always planning. I like it because it's about planning and helping customers plan, not trying to sell them hardware or services. And it's about soft skills. It's about people
Yeah.
being human,
Yeah, we obviously need to make
interacting.
money when we sell stuff. But if our whole intention was just we want to sling hardware as fast as we can at our customers, they're not going to understand it and they're going to fire us, and rightfully so.
It's not a good long-term strategy for anyone to do that. And that's not how you get to be the size of Silicon Plains. It's just not. Technology is evolving very rapidly, and we're looking at upcoming changes like Windows 10 and of support deadlines. How do you help clients prepare for those inevitable changes coming down the pipe? Like, this comes back to a little bit of the planning and not selling, right?
Yeah, and Microsoft's so incredibly disingenuous with some things, unbelievably amazing in others. And one of them is the Windows 10 to Windows 11 thing, and we know it's silly, but it sells PCs and it keeps an industry going. And of course, it's on the backs of small businesses, but there's not a whole lot any of us can do to stop that freight train. So the upgrade, and this isn't the first time we've done this kind of thing for clients, is not that big of a deal. It comes down to budget planning, just like Darrell was talking about, sitting down with Darrell so that he can say, here's a picture of what you got for computers. You're going to need this many or they're going to fall out of support. If you fall out of support, you will no longer be PCI compliant, which means you can't take credit cards anymore. So we have to do this. It's not a matter of that we want to. And that PC style approach to things just doesn't work. And instead, we're just trying to keep your business moving forward and want to make sure that nobody ever walks in and does an audit and tells you that you're not insured anymore. We're going to keep you at that high level no matter what.
We were having these conversations back in October, September of last year, and we made sure all of our customers were very aware that there might be computer shortages or PC shortages, and again, it's all about a plan. Let's get these budgeted dollars spent now before there's a rush. And so, yes, we do have a couple of customers that maybe straggled in and they're trying to purchase it now, but it's still not a surprise to them that this was coming.
Yeah, the tariffs have caused some supply chain issues too, and even pricing issues. If you're thinking about upgrading, plan ahead and buy it now. When was the best time to buy it? Today, but don't wait till tomorrow or 3 months from now because you don't know. I've seen hardware prices go up on some things. But looking forward, what are some of the new initiatives that Silicon Plains is working on to deliver even more value? Like what's happening? What's the new stuff? What's the secret sauce coming down the
Probably
pipe?
the most brand newest technology we've heard about that we're even scratching our head a little bit about is Microsoft's number one small and medium business partner, Pax8, at their most recent Beyond conference, announced AI agents that we can resell to our customers, especially our small and medium business. People talk about AI and it's going to replace work and it'll make things faster, but there's really not a mechanism that's been defined very well as to how that happens. What they're doing is saying, we'll be able to take a smart chatbot, like a chat GPT, and be able to take what that does and bolt it onto a piece of software that gives it skills. And so you end up with this combination of the large language model, OpenAI style brain that's connected to a piece of software skills that it can implement and a set of guardrails to keep it from doing things it's not supposed to, or to just make the configuration super complicated. The working example that I give is and I'm always going after accountants, and my wife is an accountant, and I'm sure she appreciates it greatly. But let's say that you're just doing something in QuickBooks every day and you're doing it and it's monotonous and it's basically the same kind of work. Like you're reconciling an account or you're just going through what your receivables look like. The AI agent is the newest thing that we will be tasked with helping our clients implement inside their own company. So instead of it being Microsoft Word, or we're going to put in new Wi-Fi and here's how to connect to it, or this is what multi-factor looks like. We're going to be adding on, would you like to automate portions of your workday? And bringing the agent tools and expertise to set that tool in your enterprise or your small business, turn it on, configure it, and make it do work faster and maybe even with fewer errors than a person.
Yeah, I think AI plays a part. It's a tool. It's not a replacement necessarily. I've got an upcoming video on that like you have to be involved in AI. It needs people. It's a tool.
For now.
It's not the end result.
For now, boogie boogie boogie. Eventually, I think we're all just going to be in the Wall-E movie, a bunch of people flying around on chairs.
Yeah, or in the Matrix, like using our brain
Be the
power to
Matrix.
power the
Yeah,
AI or something.
that's
I don't
coming
know. It's
sooner or
like
later.
our
Not today, though.
AGI and AI. I don't know. We'll see. For now, yeah. Who knows? AI is changing so rapidly. I'm doing a presentation in October, and I don't even know what I'm going to talk about yet because I'm not sure what's going to happen in the next few months.
That
Right.
was one of the
So
more interesting things that they discussed during this conference that we went to. It was that the development speed of artificial intelligence and all the things that it can get involved in and how it can kind of self-manage and is moving towards autonomous operation is so fast that it's nearly incomprehensible.
it's crazy. And the energy required for it too is interesting. Side note on that. So Dan Durrell and Damien, for those listening, whether they're MSP founders or business owners, what advice would you give as they think about their IT strategy or cybersecurity measures?
Get out, we're coming for you. We're coming for you. We're going to take all your customers.
I told you that I've run businesses in the past, and it's a personal thing that happened to me. It was an international basketball team, and I was waiting for pictures from my photographer, and I got an email saying, "Okay, here's the Dropbox with the photos from last night." And of course, I clicked on it. Actually, I was saying, "Well, it's about time, David. Jeez." And then the very next email I got was Jasmine 11, and I knew I had a problem, right? I didn't have multi-factor authentication in. Somebody had just done a phishing attack on me. I had clicked on it. I went to look at my secure server online. I couldn't find it. My domain name. I was unable to sell tickets to the next upcoming basketball game. I lost my complete email on something I should have known better about, first of all. And second of all, on something, and this is the key, that I thought would never happen to me. So, as a small business owner and even as an MSP trying to protect these folks, don't start thinking it can't happen to you. It happened to me. It's changed my life, and it creates the passion that I have today for this industry.
Yeah.
Right on.
And Denny, did you ask what was the advice for other managed service provider owners?
What advice would you give as they think about their strategy or cybersecurity measures? Like,
My second answer would be if you're above about 10 or 12 employees and you don't have somebody focused on marketing, you're screwing up and you're screwing up bad. Maybe outsource it, but probably insource it and start getting good at it now. The reason being is your organization is more sales focused than you think. Companies like ours who do a better job reaching out to new prospects, getting those lists cleaned, understanding who we're talking to, and making sure that we're doing the proper kind of automated back end, super tailored to the individual prospect experience kind of marketing. We've had a couple of years to develop this, and that engine is running. The flywheel always starts turning very slowly. And that is a major trip up, and why I think a lot of managed service providers stop growing. They run out of their referral network. Their owner can't sell anymore because they're either too busy or they just can't sell at the right rate. Before they were bringing in 1 or 2 clients every 6 months, and that does not fly when you have 15 employees. That's not enough. And so they get there, and by the time they realize, man, we should probably do something about this, companies like ours are on the way to run them over with better tools on the sales and marketing side of things. So get started earlier than you think on sales and marketing.
100%. And I didn't pay you to say that. And we can form partnerships, just like MSPs form partnerships with their clients, and they may have internal staff. You can still work with the internal IT staff. Same deal. If you have a marketing person internally, like Damien, we can collaborate. If you don't, what are you doing? Your referral networks will run out. I was just talking to a MSP back east about that very thing. He's like, my referral networks run out. I'm trying all this stuff. I'm dumping all this money into Google Ads and whatever, and I don't know what I'm doing. At the end of the day, if you've never done it before and you're a nerd, just talk to us, tech marketing team, right? And if you need MSP, of course, talk to Silicon Plains. Where can listeners learn more about Silicon Plains? I assume there's siliconplains.net, but are there any tools or security guides or audits or whatever that you'd like to highlight for them on the site?
Yeah, so biggest thing, check out the resources tab on our website. Like Denny said, www.siliconplains.net. We've got tons of free guides, resources, IT assessment tools. We've got like a IT provider grading sheet up there as well that puts our information in, and you can use it to compare to your current provider, takes all those kind of things into account. And then we do a ton of free video resources on our YouTube page as well. And that's Silicon Plains on YouTube as well.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks again to Dan Polk, the CEO of Silicon Plains, Darrell Middleton, the Colorado Regional Account Manager, and Damien Esslinger, the Marketing Coordinator, for joining the Tech Stack podcast. Be sure to visit Dan Darrell and Damien's website, as I said, at siliconplains.net. And if you found value in this video, remember to like, share, and subscribe. It's how our message gets out to the people that need it. Also, if you're working in the MSP space or support MSPs, feel free to get in touch with us at techmarketingteam.com. If you'd like to join as a guest, also feel free to get in touch with us, or if you'd like more information about how we help MSPs with our marketing. Thanks again for another great episode of the Tech Stack.